60-minute drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all
Good morning and welcome to a brand new episode of The Last Word presented to you by Team MBS Media. Of course, I'm your host, Joe Cardoza, joined by two of the best college football minds around, Jeff Barnes and Brock Vieira. Good morning, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
I'm as right as the mail.
Doing good. How about yourself?
Cannot complain. A little bit of snow here in Colorado, but I mean, that's to be expected when you live by the mountains, right?
Comes with their dinner, as they say, right?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Absolutely another week of college football. Let's just hop right into it, man. We have some great matchups to talk about. Let's just take a look at our overall scoreboard and kind of go over what happened last night's action.
Of course. So Texas all over BYU, 27-6. Florida State remaining undefeated, 41-16 over Wake Forest. Much to the delight of Greg and many Notre Dame fans, they demolished Pitt 58-7. And I would say this is on par with what we expected with the struggles of Utah's offense. Oregon goes on to win 35-6. Penn State in a dogfight with Indiana and just missed making our highlighted games of the week. They win 33-24. Georgia all over Florida. Very ugly game there, 43-20. Another tight game, just missed our cut this week. Tennessee beats Duke 33-27. Turn around. Once again, we talk about that UCF team that's finding a way to compete in the Big 12, just falling to West Virginia 41-28. And Texas A&M beat South Carolina 30-17.
Yeah, definitely some interesting games that went on yesterday. And just a real quick correction, that was Tennessee beating Kentucky. That was a really good game. That's okay. That went down to the wire there. Before we deep dive into our games, anything to take a look at in the scoreboard that caught your attention, Brock, from yesterday?
Yeah, there was one game that unfortunately a lot of the country didn't get a chance to see, but Oregon State lost to Arizona. Arizona is a team that I've been high on for a long time. Matter of fact, if you guys want to read up more on the Wildcats, you guys can check out my The Rise of the Wildcats article here at Team MBS Media. Shameless plug, of course. But what Arizona has been doing for the past couple of weeks in Pac-12 play has been very impressive. It's finally been coming together for them these past few weeks. They had a 44-6 victory against Washington State, and then they followed that up with a huge win against a ranked Oregon Beavers team. I think they were number 11th in the country last night. Obviously, that's going to change. What Jed Fish is doing down in Arizona needs to be looked at, and this is going to be one of the most impressive versions I've seen of Arizona in a long time. In fact, in their history, they've really only had a few impressive seasons. Obviously, the Desert Swarm days under Dick Tomey, they had a few good years under Rich Rodriguez, and even some of the Mike Stoops as well. And obviously, it's kind of coming back together for them now. They have a very impressive offense, two really good wide receivers, and just a bunch of characters that you're just going to fall in love with. Arizona Wildcats, a team to kind of look out for as they continue on their journey.
And what about you, Jeff? Anything from that scoreboard that stood out to you that you wanted to hit on real quick before we do our deep dives?
For me, I was going to hit on Oregon State, but he kind of beat me to it. I'll tell you what. You know, although I expected Georgia to win, Florida had chances early in just stupid decisions. Once again, we talk about stupid coaching, right? You have a chance. You go for it on 4th and 1. And you call up this ridiculous play where you're faking going under center, you snap it through his legs to the running back who has no chance of doing anything with it. It was the worst designed 4th down play I've ever seen. And all it did was just further bury Florida. Game got out of hand at that point. It wasn't even close. You have a chance to go toe-to-toe with the big dog. You don't make stupid mistakes. You don't want your players doing it. So why, as coaches, do you call stupid things like that? That is part of the problem we're talking about with coaching at the college level, at the pro level, at any level. You preach about players making stupid decisions, but you as coaches constantly make stupid decisions. And we have to sit there and listen to people parade you on TV. Right now, if you're a Florida fan, you can't be happy with the coaching situation there right now.
Talking about stupid decisions and parading people on TV, that is a perfect transition to go into our first deep dive. Let's talk a little bit about USC, and Cal, where we saw the Trojans in another dogfight against Cal. That's not a typo. 50-49 Trojan win. I'm going to start with you, Brock. What do you take away from this game?
Well, one, I gotta add another shameless plug. If you want to read up more on Cal's running back Jaden Ott, I wrote an article here for Team MBS Media, kind of giving you a precursor to the success he had yesterday before the season started, and it showed on paper, and not on paper, but in the field of play. 21 carries, 153 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the day to go along with their quarterback Fernando Mendoza's 25-39, 292 passing yards, and 2 touchdown day. Cal absolutely should have won this game over USC. The fact that they did it is kind of beyond me. I've been kind of saying that Justin Wilcox needs to be fired for a long time, and today was just a point in case. Today it was a very special game because it's the Joe Roth game. And for people who don't know who Joe Roth is, he was a good quarterback for Cal back in the 70s, I believe. Unfortunately, his life was taken from him at the age of 23, I believe, due to cancer. He's a phenomenal quarterback, led Cal to a Pac-8 at that time title. And when you have that much emotion on a team like USC that's reeling, and then you go into halftime up as you were, and then to lose the match and what you did, completely unacceptable. USC outscored Cal 34-21 in the second half. I think it's unacceptable. I do like the decision to go for 2 there, but quite frankly, you should have been in that position. USC should have been dusted away a long time before Cal was able to go on their last drive of the game. Very disappointed by the Golden Bears. And this is a program that has a lot going for them in terms of a really, really historic stadium, really nice living environment, and the fact that they have a really rich alumni group. For some reason, they have never been able to put it together. It's clear that I think Justin Wilcox in his 6th or 7th year, he's not the man for the job. And so changes need to be made for the Cal Golden Bears. In terms of USC, it's the same old. Their defense is awful. Their offense is to bail them out again. And the offensive structure does not benefit Caleb Williams in the way in which we expect. Yeah, he's putting up incredible numbers, but you look at the time he spends in the pocket, how he's looking downfield. That's ruining his professional development. And when he goes into the league, he's going to have a very tough time adjusting. Just the way that Lincoln Riley operates his offense, it's not conducive to success, and that's the reason why USC has had so many issues they've had this year.
What's your takeaway from the narrow victory for the Trojans, Jeff?
Another week, what we're going to keep talking about is the Trojans' defense, right? I mean,
yeah.
You score 50 points and you just scrape by. So they're no longer a contender. We've already ruled that out. We know Caleb Williams is what he is. He's their lifeblood. He is their offense, no matter what we talk about around him. At the end of the day, if he doesn't save the day, they don't win. So the question is going to be, well, we know what they are this year now at this point, right? They're a good team that's going to go to a bowl game. He's going to compete for the Heisman. I don't think he gets it because of the losses. But what you saw in this game is, once again, this defense that fails this team. And it luckily got that one last play. Smart decision to go for the win. Don't like the play call to go for it.
Agreed.
To me, you draw up your best 2-point play, right? If that was their best 2-point play for Cal, then I got some other concerns. But for the most part, I think, the best thing you can do in that situation is, if you're going to go for the win in that situation, you got to put your quarterback in the move, right? You got to give him a chance to either throw it into the end zone or run it into the end zone. You can't just have him sitting back there waiting for something in a place where there's no real estate. One thing about the goal line is there's no real estate. There's no deep throw. It's all 10 yards of football. So if you're not throwing it in, you're running it in. To sit there and have him play fake and sit in the pocket was a bad decision, and it cost them the game. So I appreciate him having the guts to go for the win and not going to overtime with USC, but you got to call a better play call. If you're going to go all in, you don't come out there with a mid hand. You go all in.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. But I also think that, too, that those referees, come on now, clearly clear as day, holding the tight end. But as you and Brock both stated, the way the Cal played, it shouldn't have came down to that. You shouldn't have been dependent on the referee calling pass interference at the goal line to get you a better chance to get 2 points. If their defense just had a little bit of effort, they could have won that game. But I think if you're Cal, you're probably so shocked that you're in the game and being competitive with mighty USC that you weren't even thinking about that kind of stuff towards the end of the game, because I thought this was going to be a cakewalk for the Trojans, a great little bounce back after the Utah game, and clearly they were still hungover. You had something you wanted to say, Brock?
Yeah, no, you kind of hit it right in the head, Joe. And talk about mentality, right? Cal isn't really in this position, and that's why they don't respond. You didn't see that when Jeff Tedford was there. And then that 1 year that Sonny Dykes was successful, the 3 other years, we're not talking about that. But the 1 year he was, they had that mindset as well. You look at the coaching staff right now, Justin Wilcox is a guy that hasn't had a lot of success in recent years. He has to go. Their offense coordinator, Jake Spidval, got burnt out at Texas State, so he went back to Cal in the OC role. They're on their third quarterback, who has been an absolute godsend for them, and Fernando Mendoza, which calls into question their ability to evaluate talent inside their own program. Why was this guy the third stringer? No offense to Sam Jackson the fourth or Ben, I can't remember the other guy's name, Finley or something like that, but Mendoza's come out, and since he stepped on the field, he's just been firing. Jalen Ott continues to be a godsend for this team, and once again, Cal can never put it together. The only thing that Cal ever plays for is the big game against Stanford, and I don't even know if they can beat them this year. I know we're going to talk about them later on in the show. Just going back to kind of wrap it up, Cal needs a new direction right now because they're about to go to the ACC, and when you're going to have to travel across the country as much as they're about to do, you need strong leadership and position to have a successful program, especially when you just sunk $1 billion into Memorial Stadium.
But to piggyback off of what you said, Brock, right? Sometimes a quarterback that you need is not the one that you want is not the one that you need, right? They all wanted these prototypical quarterbacks. They needed the freak quarterback. Well, guess what? They had the freak quarterback sitting at QB3. They got down to him, and he's making them look great. So sometimes it's about the guy that you really need is the guy that can play. And the guy that you want is not always the guy that you need. And what you're seeing right now is a lot of coordinators, not just at Cal, but a lot of around the country, they keep picking these quarterbacks. Oh, he's the kind of guy we like. He has the mentality. He's the team leader. He can throw the ball. He can make all the throws. But you don't have an offensive line to protect them. You don't have a running game strong enough to build off of. You need a guy that's going to be able to extend plays, do all that stuff, which is what their quarterback now is doing for them. So this is what happens when you go out there looking for something that you really don't need. You need a guy that's going to make plays for you. Sometimes a guy that makes you as a coordinator look better. And that's what they have in Cal. That's why they were in this game.
Yeah, and it all comes down all comes down to ego. If you're not a scheme fit, coaches think you suck. And that's not the case at all. It means that your scheme is not successful enough to put the team into the right positions. And it goes back. I mean, Jeff is a coach, so he can attest to this more. But there are so many coaches in this country at every single level that have such a big ego. They don't understand the talent they have in front of them and consistently blame the lack of talent for the reason why they come up short. You don't have a lack of talent issue. You just can't coach. And that is the case here with the Cal Golden Bears.
Certain coaches understand. Yeah, certain coaches understand talent over scheme. Yeah. Right? Some have it reversed. Scheme over talent. I'm going to recruit to my scheme. Well, the problem is if you don't have the talent, you can't adjust your scheme. You're going to fail. So you always got to coach what you got. That's what I've learned the hard way as a coach. You know, you go in there thinking, oh, we can do this, and you go out there and you're trying to fit square pegs and round holes. Okay? No, you coach what you got. Okay, if you have an athletic quarterback and he's the best option for you, you build an offense around that guy. You make it work. If you have a guy who's not the most mobile, you find a way to protect them. You do things to build around him. You try and conserve that offense, and you work off your defense. You find ways to win with the talents you have. Coaches need to do a better job of doing that and stop looking for guys that fit schemes. Get talent. That's why the guy in Bama wins. That's why the guy in the NFL won for so many years. He found talent, right, and he coached what he had. Okay, Bill Belichick, when he started, was a 3-4 guru like Bill Parcells, right? But you saw that New England defense morph from week to week, 3-4, 4-3, nickel. Okay? He coached what he had, right, and made it work. He may not be doing that now because he doesn't have the talent, but I tell you what, when he was at the top of his game, that's what he was doing. And the guy in Bama is doing the same thing. He's getting the talent, and he's coaching the talent, and he's still winning games. Let's face it. He may not be at the top of the national championship picture, but he's still there.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And talking about a team that might need a few more players in place to have the talent, let's go ahead and move over and stay on the West Coast and talk a little bit about this UCLA beating Colorado game yesterday, as we saw the Buffaloes go on the road, take a 28-16 loss, but more importantly, man, there should have been assault charges filed for the abuse that Shedeur Sanders had to endure yesterday, not just running for his life, but just the beating he was taking, whether it was late hits, legal hits. I mean, clearly the glaring weakness of Colorado is the offensive line. They have players in the skills positions. But I want to hear from you guys. We'll start with you, Jeff. What was your takeaway from this Colorado-Buffalo UCLA game?
Well, you already said it, Joe. There was nothing worse than what we saw in that offensive line yesterday. I think the best block was the lookout block yesterday because there were many times guys didn't get touched coming right up the middle, and it wasn't even a heavy blitz. It was just a straight four-man rush. They gave him a muddle look where they stood around the line of scrimmage, and basically, plain and simple, they just stepped and ran right past people. Okay, yes, the left side of the line were backups, but they weren't even close yesterday. Shedeur Sanders took the abuse for it. We already knew that they had issues running the football, so they couldn't protect them with the running game. They don't have a bunch of tight ends that you use to keep in and help protect them. So here's a case of scheme hurting you. And you didn't recruit that. You don't have enough of those guys, those big guys that are quality enough to protect your quarterback, and it hurt you yesterday. And again, it was very winnable too.
Very, very winnable.
What about you, Brock?
So there's two things I want to take away. One, the most successful block made on Colorado or by Colorado was the rush blocking Shallow Sanders from returning to the football game after he landed an absolutely clean hit on the UCLA wide receiver. But all jokes aside, Deion Sanders has raised two massive concerns for me as a head coach. One, can he separate himself from being a coach from being a father? Because he should have took Shedeur Sanders out of that game, especially in the end, if he wasn't competing to win. He was banged up. Shedeur was hobbling all over the field. There was no reason why he wanted to win in that game unless you're going to go for the win. With that being said, they had the ball, I believe, with 2 minutes left and 3 full timeouts. UCLA had the ball with, I think, 3 minutes left and Colorado had 3 full timeouts. For some reason, Deion Sanders let UCLA essentially run the clock down. He got the ball back in only a 2-possession game, not even a full 2-possession, 12 points. So that means that at 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points, or at least 1 extra point means you win. For some reason, he just would not even attempt to go for it. There were so many opportunities in that final drive where they could have had more time on the clock, where they could have went downfield. The fact that they didn't even try at all in the end was very disturbing to me. And it shows that he just didn't want to put his son in harm's way, which is good as a dad, horrible as a head coach. If you have a quarterback that can't be put in harm's way, you take him off the field. If you have a quarterback that has the ball, you let him throw it, especially in a situation where there's no reason not to. Who cares if you throw an interception? The game's over anyway. That was very disturbing for me. I have some major questions about Colorado's coaching staff, especially defensively. Their offensive line is awful. Sean Lewis is overrated as an offensive coordinator. And it's a bad day all around for the Buffaloes. When it comes to UCLA, they're kind of the reverse. They have a very intriguing coaching staff. Chip Kelly is still at the top of his game. His running backs, TJ Harden and Carson Steele, combined for 31 carries, 153 yards, and a touchdown. That's basically their thunder and lightning. Carson Steele is a power back in every way possible, and TJ Harden is very nice on the ground. They have a very excellent defense coordinator, DeAnton Lynn, the son of former NFL head coach Anthony Lynn. That defense has looked fantastic. That Latu kid is a for sure top 10 NFL pick, and he showed why yesterday. But going back to what Jeff said, early, if Colorado turns those field goals into touchdowns, we're talking a completely different narrative. So Colorado needs to get better at capitalizing off of opportunities, finishing drives, getting their guys open and in positions to make plays, communicating better because there was massive miscommunication that whole game. And the last part is Deion Sanders, you got to get better as a head coach because what we saw in the final 5 minutes that I did from Colorado was completely unacceptable at any level of football.
Yeah, I think also, too, for Colorado, I mean, whoever's the defensive coordinator this season does not come back next year. I mean, you can blame it on the talent, but there's got to be to Jeff's point, like you said, if you put like a Bill Belichick or a Nick Saban as a defensive coordinator of Colorado, I think by now, this far into the season, they figure out what they have, what their strengths are, and adapt their defense to make those strengths be maximum. Yeah, you might not have more wins, but it doesn't look as bad as it looked. Missed tackles, missed assignments, guys coming in and out of the lineup, and that it just seems like a total mess on the defensive side of the ball. And then I think number one priority when it comes to recruiting is both sides of the line, offensive and defensive line. I think your playmakers and the people that you have in the outside positions will come back for the most part, I think. Plus, you're going to get some wins in the transfer portal because you're Colorado. But I think your main focus has got to be on both sides of those lines. Instead of trying to find the star tight end or the star wide receiver, you need to find the best guard in the country, the best tackle in the country, maybe even another offensive line coach, I don't know, or some help for him. Because they're not going to be able to do anything until they get both sides of those lines corrected.
Yeah, and one of the main issues that I see there, you talked about the defensive coordinator. I think, listen, he's a good mind. I think he had a better defensive coordinator when he was at Jackson State, right, and Dennis Thurman. I think Dennis Thurman would have been a better fit at Colorado. What I've watched this season, it's not always about the talent. When we talk about that Colorado State game, you gave up so many yards on drag routes.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
yeah.
my God.
Just think about it. Just the drag route. How do you, as a coordinator, it's not a hard route to stop. Okay, so, I mean, when you're getting beat all game long on under route, and you can't figure it out, that's an issue to me that comes about scheme. What about the scheme is not working? He tried man, he tried zone. Listen, under routes, yes, they're meant to work on anything. The mesh concept works on everything. It should never be stopped. However, it doesn't always get you first downs and touchdowns either. Okay, as a coordinator, I just can't call mesh routes the whole drive and think I'm going to score a touchdown. It doesn't work that way. Unfortunately for Colorado, it did against Colorado State. And you're seeing it week after week where they're giving up stuff and they can't seem to scheme fit how to stop any of this stuff. Okay, the Stanford game where the guy just sat there and ran backside slant all day.
Yeah,
you don't have anybody robbing it. I mean, come on, he's an isolated X. It's the easiest play to double team on the field. Okay, so at this point, you saw some frustration with the coaches yesterday on the sideline. You saw the defensive coordinator was frustrated. I'd be frustrated too as a defensive coordinator because I'd have to watch this film and explain to my guys how we couldn't stop something. So, there would be some looks at this coaching staff from Deion Sanders, but it was definitely start with the defensive side. If you really believe in this coordinator and you give him the talent and doesn't look overly better next year, he's got to go.
I don't even know if I give him that chance. That's just me. I don't know if I to your point, I don't know if I recruit better players on the defensive side of the ball and then give them to him because, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, in my opinion, Jeff. Where's the adaptation? If they're doing the same play over and over again and we can't adapt at all, what's going to matter if we have 5 stars or 4 stars back there at linebacker or back there at defensive back? Are you going to put them in position to make plays? Because he hasn't shown it at all so far this season.
There's 1,000,001 ways to stop one player. We have trap coverages. We have specialized double coverages. We can roll zones your way. We can do 1,000,001 ways to stop one guy. You have an isolated X beating you all game long, especially for a whole half. Don't put it all on Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter did everything he could. Okay, he was draped all over that kid. The kid took it off his head. Okay, I don't put that all on Travis Hunter. When the guy's beating you at backside slant as an isolated X, that's the first thing you do is you rob the slant on the backside. How did you not stop it all game long? That to me is a coordinator thing. If your players if you're calling it and the players can't execute it, you just have dumb football players. And you definitely got to recruit better. But there's the one thing the coach hates are dumb football players. Let's face it. The guys that can't figure out what you're trying to do, it happens. But there's no way that these kids can't figure out that one simple concept. That right there is a scheme problem, and that's on the coordinator. So if your coordinator can't stop stuff that he's been hit with for quarter after quarter after quarter, it's time to replace your coordinator.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's stick with this West Coast theme and talk a little bit about the Washington Huskies, who once again on the road struggled, but they were able to get the win against a team that just blew out Colorado in a great comeback. You saw Washington beat Stanford 42-33. Michael Penix with another great game. Struggled a little bit with that one interception early on, but his Heisman campaign continues. We're going to start with you, Brock. What are your takeaways from this Washington-Stanford game?
Washington's defense continues to be a massive concern for me. Since they begun Pac-12 play, the defense is currently averaging 25.8 points per game given up, and that is including that 7-point performance by Arizona State in that highly controversial matchup 2 weeks ago. They have not played the cream outside of Oregon, the cream of the crop in the Pac-12 yet, and they struggled mightily. Yes, they blew out Cal, but they only won by 7 against Arizona. They only won by 3 against Oregon, and they have a schedule coming up where they have to travel to USC. They have to play Utah at home. They have to play Oregon State on the road, and then they finish off at what could be the last ever Apple Cup in Seattle. Those are games that they could all lose if they don't improve defensively. On the Stanford's quarterback, Ashton Daniels, they might have a solid quarterback with him. He went 31 for 50 for 367 yards, a touchdown, 18 carries, 85 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns. You let one man put up pretty much 450 total yards of offense on you with 3 scores. How is that acceptable? It's not acceptable. And then A.O. Menor, the wide receiver who went off against Colorado, he had 9 receptions for 146 yards and a score as well. Where are these defensive adjustments? We already know about Washington and how prolific their offense is, but there are times in which their offensive coordinator, I believe his name is Ryan Grubbs, will call something that you just kind of look around and go, what was that? And the more times as the season goes on, we start to see that more times in each and every single game. Kind of running the numbers real quick, they gave up. So the Washington defense gave up 32 points against Cal, 24 against Arizona, 33 against Oregon, and then another 33 against Stanford. Those aren't numbers that are conducive to winning. Anytime you constantly allow teams to break that 4 touchdown threshold, how is your offense supposed to keep up? Even if they do get to the college football playoff, they clearly do not have the defense for a national championship effort. And right now, if I'm a Washington Huskies fan, that honeymoon period after Oregon is starting to fade rapidly. And the realization that maybe our lofty expectations are a little bit too high are starting to set in. Washington, glad you guys got the win, but this was a really, really unimpressive performance. And in quarterback Michael Penix Jr., who had to bail you out, was dealing with sickness as well. So that just seeing how is that going to linger on as the season goes on.
What about you, Jeff? The Washington Huskies pulling out another one on the road. What are your thoughts?
We know their offense starts and ends with Michael Penix. Can they run the football? Yes, they have quality running backs. They have talent on offense, but this offense doesn't go without Penix. So you need these performances from him. Their defense, we thought, would be a lot better. They started the season off a lot better. Kind of showing some wear and tear. The teams are starting to figure out scheme-wise how to beat them. And these games are getting way too close for comfort for them. They're the last undefeated Pac-12 team. So they got a gauntlet to still run. This is going to be very shaky for them when they should be looking stronger as they go along. So this game here, and Stanford is a tough out now. We're seeing Stanford finally becoming a quality team again. We saw them last year. They were down. It was time for a regime change. At the beginning of the season, they struggled. The Colorado game, I think, gave them the wind in their sails because they've been on a motivation. They've been on a trend going upward ever since. So I think what you saw this game was another one building block for that program. They came out. They were able to hang with Washington. They gave them the business because they were going back and forth with this lead for several quarters. So I think what you're seeing is, once again, Michael Penix being able to come through and make the plays when he needed to get it done. But, as again, it's a little too close for comfort. This wasn't Oregon. This wasn't Washington State. This was Stanford, who's fighting from the bottom up. You've got to put this team away early. You can't let them hang around. They're letting too many teams hang around. You're undefeated now. That may not last till the end of the season. We're talking about conference championship. Then the waters get real muddy. We're talking about 1 and 2 losses. So you got to keep separate for the rest of the group. So you got to remain undefeated. That's a tall task for Washington right now because they're really, really playing a dangerous game right now.
Yeah, nah, without a doubt, man. Well, that kind of finishes our West Coast tour.
Yeah, we're West Coast heavy this week.
Yeah, for sure. And they say people on the West Coast play soft football. Maybe that's just me that thinks that still. You are watching The Last Word on Team MBS Media. We'll take a real quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to break down the rest of our deep dive matchups. Keep it locked.
In 2006, we founded Yeti Coolers with a simple mission: build the cooler we use every day if it existed. One that was built for the serious outdoor enthusiasts rather than for mass discount retailers. One that could take the abuse we knew we'd put it through, out in the field and on the water. One that simply wouldn't break. We decided early on that production innovation would come from necessity and first-hand experience, not from market research and data analysis. Today, Yeti products perform when it matters most. Whether that be an excursion into the remote Alaskan wilderness, chasing redfish on the Gulf Coast, or just getting together with friends in the backyard, we make gear that helps you stay out longer, travel farther, and live harder. # built for the wild.
Welcome back to The Last Word, Team MBS Media. Joe Cardozo with Jeff Barnes and Brock Vieira. Went through our first slate of West Coast heavy football games. We want to keep things rolling. This is one of those games that, again, when I saw on the schedule, I was like, okay, well, that's going to be a win. And then to my shock and surprise, as we say, any given Saturday, anything can happen. Georgia Tech, that's right. Georgia Tech defeats the Tar Heels. We saw that game not being as close as I thought it was going to be. But Georgia Tech wins 46-42 over North Carolina, keeping that run game alive. As Georgia Tech has been doing for the last couple of years. Super run-heavy offense, brand new head coach who's kind of changed that offense up a little bit and kind of got them out of that run-heavy. But he went back to the old school yesterday, ended up getting a victory. We're going to start off with you, Jeff. What were your takes on the Tar Heels suffering this loss?
For UNC fans, there's a lot of Texas fans that know how you feel. You come out undefeated for a while, and then all of a sudden the wheels fall off, back-to-back losses. This was Mac Brown's MO at Texas, right? So you're getting the full Mac Brown experience according to Texas fans. Very good coach, wins. But he goes through these pitfalls in seasons. You come out, you lose last week. This is a game you need to rebound for. You lose again. So forget about playoff. Forget about conference title. Right now, you're not even in the conference title picture. Okay? So you're going to go to a bowl game most likely. But right here, this was a game where you needed to rebound. You needed to get your season back on track. You needed to get any momentum you got going. There's no doubt about it. You have one of the best quarterbacks in college football. Your offense can score. But North Carolina's defense has been porous this season. And that's one of the shockers. One thing you've always known about Mac Brown is at least his teams could play defense. But unfortunately, they haven't done that this year. We've seen games where they've just had to keep scoring now to beat opponents. Teams couldn't keep up. Now you're getting to the point where teams are keeping up and you're struggling. So Drake May's still out there performing very well. But unfortunately, the wins aren't translating into overall team success. You just lost 2 in a row. You're now 4-2. And you still got some tough games to go. No doubt about it. You can still beat the Clemsons in the conference. You can still beat some of these other teams in your conference. But it's not looking good for Mac Brown's team right now.
What about you, Brock?
Yeah, I want to start by saying, when is Drake May going to get the Caleb Williams treatment? And that is to be blamed for things that are out of your control. Drake May did everything he could in this ball game to win, and it wasn't enough because of the UNC defense. The UNC defense was constantly getting beaten over the top. They're constantly getting ran on. He's King, who was someone that Texas A&M fans still hate till today, went 23 for 30 for 287 yards and 4 touchdowns against you. That's unacceptable as defense. The running back for Georgia Tech, Dante Smith, had 22 carries for 178 yards and a touchdown. That's not acceptable. I mean, they're averaging 36 points per game in their last 3 games. 2 of those games were losses to Virginia and to Georgia Tech, 2 teams at which we expected a team of the caliber of the Tar Heels to win. I did some digging back, and since Mack Brown has returned to North Carolina, he returned in 2019, so his program's drafting cycle started in the 2020 NFL Draft. Since that 2020 NFL Draft, 15 players from North Carolina have been selected. Do you guys know how many defenders out of that 15 there were? 3.
2? Oh,
No,
I was close.
you're really cool. Honestly, like, you probably should be right because this is the result of those 3 picks. Jason Strowbridge was a 5th-round selection, I believe, in 2020. He's a free agent now. Chaz Surratt was a 2021 selection, a 3rd round, a linebacker who's now on the Jets as essentially just a special teamer. He was drafted by the Vikings, so was cut by them, and he's basically bouncing up and down the Jets practice squad for these past couple of years. The last one is Raymond Vohasek, who was drafted in the 7th round of this last draft, and he's not a free agent. That's not acceptable for any team of that caliber. And then you start looking at the fact that they lost Tony Grimes to the transfer portal. What is with Mack Brown and defenders? I know he has an affinity for Gene Chizik because Chizik was the defensive coordinator when he won his national title at Texas. Chizik is a head coach, national champion winner as a head coach himself, but it's clear that the game has passed him by. And unfortunately, from a defense standpoint, it's passed by Mack Brown as well. It's a tough loss, but when you look at all these facts on quote unquote Monday morning, or I guess it's called Sunday morning, it's really not that surprising to me. And for a team that has had lofty expectations, whenever they break into the top 10, they falter. In 2020, when they broke into the top 10, they got smoked by Texas A&M, even though they lost majority of their starters to the draft in that bowl game. When they started the season in the top 10, they lost to Virginia Tech in the season opener. In a season in which Virginia Tech ended up firing that same head coach, Justin Fuente, before the season even ended. And then, obviously, this year, the moment they get into the national championship conversation, they beat Miami, they lose to a Virginia team who's been awful since Tony Elliott has gotten there, and then they follow that up with a 46-42 defeat to Georgia Tech. At what point do you have to say, hey, maybe what we're doing isn't working? Maybe getting rid of Dre Bly wasn't the answer to our coaching staff's problems. Maybe that there's a lot more things that we got to expel in order to be better as a team. Or are you just going to say, it's my way or the highway, I'm Mack Brown, North Carolina is never going to fire me, I got the same job security as Trip Ferentz, I'm going to do what I like. I don't know what his answer is going to be, but if he wants to win another national title, he needs to make some full-scale changes on that coaching staff.
Brock putting the whole North Carolina team on notice right there at that one. I kind of agree with you, though. I mean, defense wins championships. We love offense, but at the same time, you got to have a defense that can make stops and that can also turn the ball over in critical situations. And unfortunately, not just this year, for the last couple of years, the Tar Heels do not have that. But when we talk about a team that can take advantage of turnovers and get things done, man, what a magical Saturday it was in Lawrence, Kansas, as we saw the Kansas Jayhawks defeat the Oklahoma Sooners 38-33. Devin Neal with a great game for Kansas. And then the scene after that game was also, I mean, huge. Did I mention huge win for this Jayhawks program as they continue to turn their culture and program around. It's been really super awesome to watch as you see a team that was a joke of the Big 12 over the last 3 or 4 years slowly let people know that they're on a program on the rise. And Oklahoma can't hang their hats in that Texas win any longer. Now it's time to start shaking off the cobwebs of that and getting things back in order. We'll start with you, Brock, real quick, and get your evaluations of this Kansas Jayhawks victory yesterday.
Yeah, Kansas definitely deserved this victory, but Oklahoma handed the game to them without a doubt. Offensively, the fact that Jeff Levy seemed to make 0 adjustments is a testament again to the fact that he is actually awful as an offensive coordinator. We've known this for a while since he's been at Oklahoma for his past 2 seasons, which is strange considering like they might not be like good people, but from a football standpoint, his father-in-law and brother-in-law are some of the most innovative offensive minds in college football. That being, of course, Art Briles and Kendall Briles, and yet that hasn't really translated over to Levy. Or the fact that Levy's last job was offensive coordinator under Lane Kiffin, and yet that creativeness hasn't really rubbed off in a consistent way for the Sooners. And then on Kansas's last drive, you're going against a backup quarterback in Bean, who, he has talent. He's fast. He's not that great of a quarterback as shown by his stat line. Yet you allow a receiver to be wide open on fourth down, where a stop there gives you the game. How is that acceptable? Oklahoma made a variety of mistakes in that fourth quarter that were just mind-boggling. Of course, that open man on fourth down that ended up setting up the game-winning score. Another one was, I believe, Anthony, the wide receiver, had a false start on 4th and 5, in which OU was about to go for it. Had OU converted that, I think that essentially would have been game as well. And then even on that final drive for Oklahoma, they got lucky by getting into target range. But with 8 seconds left, you run a play-action pass? Really? What is the thought process behind these things? Now, Brett Venables has come out and said that this loss is on him, and I guess as the head coach, he's right, and he's trying to take responsibility. But there are so many factors that went into the loss that was outside of his control. It's really down to a few things, and the main thing is Jeff Levy. The fact he still has a job this morning is pretty incredible, because if I was him, I would have pulled the old Pat Hayden and left him at the airport in Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm pretty sure that airport doesn't have flights all night long, so he's probably have to wait another couple of days to go home. So really awesome.
Wow.
Really, I'm just saying, it's true. I mean, there might be like Chick-fil-A. Don't work on Sundays. I don't know. I've never been to Lawrence, Kansas. But the point remains, OU lost this game as much as Kansas wanted. Kansas had 4 rushing touchdowns, 225 rushing yards. That's not acceptable, but neither was that offensive performance, especially with a guy like Dylan Gabriel, who is just starting to establish himself in the Heisman conversation. In one swift Saturday, all those ambitions are out the door. And should anything else go wrong for Oklahoma, that dream of a national championship is going out the door with it.
What about you, Jeff? What did you take from this game? Any respect or love for the Kansas Jayhawks at all? I feel like Brock was heavy on. They just kind of rolled into a victory. I thought Kansas earned it and fought hard to get the W. But what's your take on this game?
I want to say before Jeff begins, they definitely fought hard. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't deserve the win. Lance Leipold and that team has done a great job. But what I'm saying is that if Oklahoma was batting at 100% on the mental side of the game, because Kansas clearly was, Oklahoma still wins it. Oklahoma needed a mental deficiency in order to lose that football game, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, but I think you would agree 3 years ago, nothing Kansas could have done would have made that game competitive. So for Kansas to make that game competitive and even get the win just shows the growth of the Jayhawks program. Even 4 years ago, that would have been roll the Oklahoma helmet out in the field, win 56-3, get back on the plane and go home. And that's not the case. So that's not the case this year, and that's been the case the last couple of years with the way this Kansas program is turning around. I'm trying to give some credit to the Jayhawks program. I think what they're doing right now as far as changing that program and making it become more of a football school, not just a basketball school, is pretty cool to watch. But, Jeff, what's your take?
Yeah, well, what they've done the past couple of years, right? They've become respectable the last couple of years. But I tell you what, this is more than what they've been for the past 30 years. Okay, this has been the laughing stock of college football for quite some time, So, granted, they still had NFL players come out of there. It was few and far between. What we saw yesterday was a Kansas team step up, very good Kansas team step up with a backup quarterback who's still going to be a player when his chance comes. He had a chance to show up yesterday versus Oklahoma. Shocking that Brett Venables didn't have an answer for him. That's the question. How did Oklahoma not have an answer for him? I said last week when they barely beat UCF that Oklahoma was in trouble. They weren't going to last undefeated the rest of the way. There was going to be a team that beats them. Little did I know it would just be a week later that loss would come. So Oklahoma did everything they had to do to lose, but Kansas did everything they had to do to win. Okay? They went out there and they performed with the guys they had. Once again, you talk about coaching the guys you have. That's what Kansas did. So the fact that Jason Bean went out there and had a great game, they put him in position to make plays. They didn't go out there and call outrageous stuff for the kid to go out there and struggle with. They made him comfortable in the game plan, and he went out there and did the job. So give credit to Kansas. But going out there and understanding this is the team that we have. This is the hand we're dealt today. Let's go out there and make the best of it. And let's see if we come out here with the win. You please the home crowd. The goalpost went into the river. That couldn't be a better ending in Kansas.
And then I think Brock had one more point he was trying to make. I want to make sure I didn't cut him off.
Oh, no, I was just going to add that Oklahoma right now was riding on a high because of their victory against Texas. The fact they got off to such a great start this season from a record standpoint. But when we start breaking down their games, especially the performances against Cincinnati, against SMU, and so on and so forth, you start seeing a bunch of deficiencies in their game that are really going to start to reveal themselves, not only as the season goes on, but if they are in the Big 12 championship game or if they do make the college football playoff. I believe that Oklahoma put themselves in a better position to compete in the SEC when they hired Brett Venables compared to keeping Lincoln Riley on as a head coach. However, that doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be competitive. So that this mindset, especially after Texas' big victory in Tuscaloosa, and then also Oklahoma's hot start to the season, that they're initially just going to assimilate into the SEC with relative ease is absolutely outrageous. Obviously, we talk about Georgia and Alabama, but when we start talking about teams like Tennessee, Florida, Ole Miss, teams that might not necessarily be the cream of the crop in the SEC, when they go out and they play teams like Texas and Oklahoma puts in a performance like this, they're going to get boat race more Saturdays than they expect. That's going to be a rude awakening for the people in Norman and in Austin.
And now as we get towards the end of our show, it's time for our segment where Jeff and Brock will share what team or what issue or something they saw yesterday that made them think it was made as a statement. So we'll get ready for our segment called Statement. Start with you, Jeff. What was the statement made yesterday?
To me, it has to be, of course, Kansas. Okay, they're saying they were for real yesterday. We talked about the improvements in this program. We said, we saw last year they started off with a great start to the season, kind of fell apart later on, went to a bowl game, performed well, came out this season, continued to play well, had the injury to the missing Jalen Daniels, still came out there and knocked off Oklahoma. This is a program that is ascending. They're showing you that, hey, we got a plan. We understand how to recruit now. We have a coaching staff. We believe they can make us successful. They're going to be a competitive program in this conference for years to come. Kudos to them for coming out there, not only getting it done versus Oklahoma, but showing the world that you can finally start to respect Kansas football, something we haven't done for 3 decades.
Mr. Vieira?
I want to add something Jeff hasn't done for 3 decades. I remember I respected Kansas football in that one beautiful 2007 season. But my statement actually is going up to the Pacific Northwest. Last shameless plug of the show, I wrote an article before the season that said that Jake Dickert, the Washington State head coach, was failing. I had to eat myself a slice of humble pie after Washington State got out to a fantastic 4-0 start when they were once ranked number 13th in the nation. Jake Dickert was feeling himself, made some really poor choices, especially comments against Lee Corso. And you know what's happened since? They've lost 4 straight games. Once again, I will now remove my apology, go back to my original point, and say that once again, Jake Dickert is failing in Washington State. I mean, what happened last night? They lost to an Arizona State team that has been on the come up for a while. Obviously, we know that they've been dealing with massive off-the-field and on-field issues as Dillingham, the head coach, is starting to kind of build his program. But coming into this game, Arizona State won 1 game by 3 to the powerhouse of Southern Utah, right? So basically, a non-FBS school was their only win, and they only won by 3. They lost by multiple scores to Oklahoma State. They got blanked by Fresno State at home, 29-0. USC, even though it was a back-and-forth game, beat them by multiple scores. California, they should have lost that game, but Cal ended up beating Arizona State. Colorado ended up beating Arizona State in a close one. And even Washington, in that crazy game that we saw last week, ended up beating Arizona State. You know who didn't beat Arizona State? Washington State. 27-38 was the final score of that game. Ever since Washington State played UCLA, I think defenses basically have copied exactly what UCLA did in order to keep Cam Ward from being the explosive threat that we all expect him to be. They've locked up Kyle Williams, who has had a really bad second half to his initial solid start to the season. Lincoln Victor hasn't produced as people might have expected. And the team is just awful at this point. Washington State has really no direction as a program outside of football in terms of where they're going to land this whole conference realignment thing. They have no direction on the field. I am no longer apologizing to Jake Dickert. I do believe that it might be time for him to lose his job maybe sooner rather than later. I do like the offensive coordinator, but his production lately hasn't been, stellar. So it might be time to look somewhere else in order to guide the Cougars back to being at a point where they're nationally relevant again and not just known for flying a flag during college game day.
And for myself, I think my statement's going to be one for the little guy. I want to say shout out to James Madison. Faced their toughest game of the season, according to their schedule, against Old Dominion. Their offense has been great all season long, but it was not great yesterday. But they found a way to win. And by the way, it was their 11th win in a row. They're also nationally ranked. Of course, it's not a team we're going to talk about when it comes to college football playoff or anything like that. But it was just cool to see a little guy get in the battle, fight, find a way to win. And if they continue on the track they're on right now, you might see James Madison in a pretty decent bowl game, at least decent for them. And that's a team that I thought made a statement this week.
And a team that came right up from FCS and came up with success right away, right? You think about it, most teams that come up from FCS have about a year or two to adjust. No, they came right up and made noise right away. So kudos to that coaching staff. Kudos to that athletic director and that department for coming up with a plan once again to say, hey, we got the talent, we got the staff to go up and compete at the next level. And they're doing just that.
Yeah, because between the three of us, we've seen it more times than not. When you make that leap, that first year, that first 5 years are really, really ugly. There's not a lot of success going on.
Look at all the teams that came over from the American that were good teams. Cincinnati, UCF, Houston. All those teams are good teams in the American. They're taking their whoopings in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, Cincinnati lost by how much yesterday? At one point, I saw the game was like 37-7, like in the second and third quarter or something like that. I didn't even check to look what the final was in that game.
I totally forgot what the final was. I saw it was bad.
Yeah, definitely was. Well, man, another great show. Love talking college football with you guys, Brock and Jeff. And we want to appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Well, this is the kind of content you can expect from us all the time at Team ES Media. The college football season rolls on. Look for us on Twitter because I know the three of us are going to be very active on Tuesday when those first college football rankings drop. I'm sure that's going to be a fun conversation. And MBS will be doing our own rankings too as well. We'll probably drop ours on Tuesday and kind of share each person that does college football coverage what their top 4 teams are and kind of have that debate as well. But as always, thank you guys for watching and make sure you keep up with us because we have Moving the Chains coming up next where we go from college football to NFL. Jeff and I move from a host to an analyst. Jeff keeps his role and goes from an analyst to basically a coach / GM. It's hosted by Ashmir Prasad, who makes her return after her whirlwind trips around the world these last couple of weeks. I'll be happy to have her back on. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you guys next week.